International star Fiennes Tang died at age 37 due to a heart attack. The stinging smell of disinfectant, ghastly white walls, a variety of life maintenance equipment, and a breathing apparatus connected to him. But haven't I died? Why am I lying on a hospital bed? His brain was a muddled mess and he had a terrible headache. He closed his eyes and vaguely heard the voices of a few nurses chatting nearby. Everyone kept referring to him as Finn. The body that he was inhabiting at the moment couldn't be his 37-year-old body that had been constantly plagued with illness. He felt he had probably become someone else. All his thoughts and guesses ended the day he became fully conscious and had the breathing apparatus taken off. He asked the nurse to bring him a mirror. The nurse misunderstood him and said, "Don't worry. Your face hadn't been injured." He could only smile helplessly in response. The nurse still handed him a mirror. Seeing himself in the mirror, he finally confirmed his doubts. He really had become another person. A young, handsome man. That was good news, at least he didn't turn into a woman. For someone who had fought a serious illness for 30+ years, they would either be extremely negative about their current situation, or they would be like him, optimistic and lively. Even after he had revived from death and swapped bodies with another person, he still accepted the matter with open arms. Does this body have heart disease? Is this body healthy? He couldn't help but ask. The nurse looked at him strangely and replied, "You are very lucky. Although you fell into the ocean and were unconscious for half a month, you've fully recovered. Your body is in great shape. You aren't suffering from heart disease or anything else for that matter." Once she finished replying, the nurse hurried out of the room. He presumed that she probably thought he had lost his mind after being unconscious for half a month. Whatever made him this way, he wanted to thank God for giving him a second chance at life, and for giving him a healthy body. During his time in the hospital, Finn didn't have any visitors. The good thing was that the various items in his bag gave him some sense of his current identity. Finn generally understood his situation after finishing the diary. His parents were divorced. His mom was a famed star in the country, but had already passed away, causing him to lose his source of support. He had been popular for a while after he debuted in an idol group when he was younger, but lost popularity when he went solo. To top it off, he had a crush on the CEO of his agency. Basically, he was a squanderer, abandoned by the management. He was an undetermined second-rate star who had lost standing in the industry. Although he was an outdated starlet, he had been reborn again as a celebrity. Perhaps this was what people called fate. On the day the hospital released him, Finn saw his manager, a slightly chubby middle-aged man. The original Finn disliked this man, the one now didn't like him either. The middle-aged man looked overly shrewd. For an abandoned idol with only a few years left to his contract, Finn found his future to be very unclear with the other as his manager. The middle-aged man quickly filled out the release forms, seemingly annoyed the entire time. Finn carried his luggage and followed the manager to the car. "I heard from the doctor that you hurt your head and can't remember much," the man said blankly as he drove. "Everything's a little bit blurry. I can't really remember anything." Finn looked out the window and gazed at the scenery of S-City. After a long pause, the manager said with unclear intentions, "It might be a good thing that you can't remember." Finn didn't overthink it, since the way the previous Finn had acted was fairly unlikable. But on a deeper note, he was a child who had grown up without love, and probably wanted to catch other people's attention by doing outrageous things. Yet, everything kept rebounding back to him. Finn hoped that child would be reborn into a complete family filled with affection in his next life. About 30 minutes later, the manager pulled into a high-class residential area. Finn found this quite odd. A second-rate celebrity who was past his time shouldn't be able to afford a mansion worth tens of millions. "The bank claimed your home a few days ago. President Liu will arrange a room in the company dorm for you, so live here for a couple of days." The manager got out of the car and looked at Finn with a perplexed face. "Follow me." "Whose house is this? Wouldn't it be bad for me to live here?" Taking his luggage, Finn followed behind his manager. He felt that this kind of mansion shouldn't be used by a second-rate idol like him. But the things he had learned from the diary were too limited, so he couldn't guess if the previous Finn happened to have some rich friends. His deceased mother seemed to be quite famous in the country, so it wasn't unlikely that he'd have a few. "Brat, you've gotten really lucky. To think there's someone who's still willing to house you," the manager said without turning his head. His words were filled with mockery and haughty contempt. Finn decided the first thing he would do in his new life was to change his manager. Not long after the man pressed the bell, someone came to greet them. The one who opened the door was a maid. They exchanged a few words and the manager walked in. Finn followed afterwards. The design inside was very simple, yet it was still quite elegant. One could tell the mansion's owner was a man with good taste. Mr. Charles was President Lou's classmate in college. He is usually very busy, so you'll probably only see him at night. Your room is right here. The manager brought Finn to the second floor and pushed open the door to the room at the very end of the hall. Inside, there was a private bathroom, a TV, a computer, closets. Finn was more than satisfied. Remember, don't trouble Mr. Charles in any way. This is not advice, but a warning, the manager said callously before departing. Finn felt a bit helpless. He didn't know if the previous owner of his body had some sort of relationship with Charles, and if there were, how deep their relationship was. After having stayed in the hospital for a few days, Finn had to admit, he was fully satisfied with the odorless room, the warm bed, and the bathroom that came equipped with a bathtub. He changed out of his clothes and sat down for a soak in the tub. Since the maid had already told him that he was free to use anything in the mansion, he wasn't going to hold back. He wouldn't touch things in other parts of the mansion, but as for the bathroom in his own room, he'd utilize it well. After he had taken a relaxing hot bath and changed into the soft pajamas the maid had prepared for him, Finn stepped back into the room in his slippers. Food that looked amazingly delicious was placed at the head of the bed. The owner of this mansion might be a pretty nice person. Although he hadn't met him yet, these little services gave Finn a good impression of Charles. He wasn't particularly hungry, and felt full after eating only a small amount. Not long afterwards, the maid knocked on the door and came in to clean up the plates and utensils. She even brought him a cup of warm milk, and told Finn to rest a bit, as Mr. Charles wouldn't be back until late tonight due to some matters. Finn politely expressed his gratitude. The maid looked blankly at Finn, and left after she saw that he had finished the milk. Although the maid's attitude was a bit cold, it didn't affect the excitement Finn felt from being given a new life. He felt a bit drowsy. He rubbed lightly on his brows in an attempt to keep himself awake. In the end, he couldn't fight the drowsiness and fell asleep. Finn slept very deeply. He hadn't had such a deep sleep in a very long time, but sometimes, he also felt like he wasn't sleeping. His consciousness was blurry, and a little jumbled. In his haziness, it seemed that he heard the door unlocking and someone coming in. When he woke up, Finn looked at the clock hanging on the wall. It was 5:54 in the morning. His head still felt a bit dizzy and heavy. Finn heard a succession of noises, eventually ending with the click of a switch. The room instantly became bright. Finn squinted, feeling overwhelmed by the sudden brightness. "You finally thought it through?" The man narrowed his eyes. Finn thought for a second and decided to tell the truth. "I just came from the hospital. I suffered a concussion and can't remember many things," Finn told him while holding on to the bathroom door. "Finn, don't try to play tricks." The man pushed open the door and walked in with big strides. Bathrooms in high-class mansions truly are nice. The faucet instantly emits warm water. Finn let the faucet run and sat inside the tub. He shrugged and gave a pained smile. "You can ask the doctor, or you can go find that fat guy who sent me here." "Does that mean you don't remember our deal?" The man narrowed his eyes again, the corner of his mouth flicking up. Finn shook his head. So he had a deal with this man. "You live with me for a month, and we recommend Gab as the leading male for director Liam's new movie." Finn felt dizzy as soon as he heard the man's words. "I really agreed to such a ridiculous thing?" Amused by Finn's expression of utter disbelief, the man lifted his head and laughed out loud. "Are you really Finn? I don't think you've lost your memory, but rather turned into another person altogether." Charles extended his gaze, staring with intense eyes at the man sitting opposite of him. "I haven't seen you for only a month, but you give me a completely different feeling. I lost my memory, so I don't remember what I was like in the past. What did you think of me when you saw me a month ago?" Finn splashed hot water onto his face, gently massaging it. "A useless piece of trash." Charles rested his arm on the tub, supporting his chin. "But I think our agreement is plain stupid. Can we cancel it? I really like you, so I don't plan on voiding the deal." The other man promptly rejected Finn's request. "But," Charles' words took a turn in direction. "I thought it was rather humorous when you actually agreed to this deal in the beginning. But since I really like you right now, I'll let this deal be altered a little, as long as it's within a range I can accept." It appeared like he had come across a tough and cunning businessman. Finn looked at the man in front of him. Aside from the fact that the word deal greatly disgusted him, Charles' attitude and manner of speech was fully to his tastes. "You've already recommended Gab to the director?" Charles raised his eyebrows. "I can recommend you to the director, but you have to understand that Director Liam isn't someone who'd openly agree just because of a sponsor's recommendation." The person who was in front of him now was completely different from the Finn he once knew. Why would Tristan think that Finn was an annoying piece of trash? After careful contemplation, Finn tried to barter as much freedom as he could get from this agreement. Settling the deal with this tyrant face to face was the wisest decision. Giving an abrupt rejection or refusing to compromise would only make the other person despise him. The final result would be getting himself killed. Finn still held a huge passion for the entertainment industry. In his eyes, being able to live again was a second chance from the heavens. All he wanted to do was make the most of this opportunity and do his best. The past Finn had already angered his company's boss. Otherwise, he wouldn't be allotted such a horrible manager. The Finn now not only had to scrub the previous one's butt for him, he also had to find someone to support him, someone who would prevent him from being buried by the management. There was one such man in front of him now, Charles. When Finn saw his 3-digit savings account, he had nothing to say. It seemed like the original Finn didn't waste any time in wiping out the sum from his mother's inheritance. No wonder the manager had told him that his house had already been taken by the bank. The 3-digit savings account was all he had left of his personal property. Putting the passbook back into the drawer, Finn took a quick shower before changing his clothes. The entire wardrobe consisted of beautiful pieces from brand-name companies, but he honestly couldn't compliment the pervious Finn's bizarre sense of taste. Finn just barely managed to pick out a normal-looking, neutral-colored outfit. Finn walked down the stairs. Charles was already up. "Morning." Charles lifted his head in a polite smile. In front of him lay a simple but exquisite breakfast and a few daily newspapers on the side. Finn casually scanned them. Aside from the usual business and finance papers, there was also one on entertainment. There were 2 portions of breakfast on the table. Finn walked over and pulled out his chair to sit beside Charles. As he sipped his freshly ground and brewed coffee, he felt comforted by its familiar taste. Because Finn knew he could die at any moment due to his heart problems, he had always taken good care of his quality of life. "Entertainment news?" Finn asked curiously. Charles smiled. "For random reading. Do you have anything planned later?" Charles casually asked, while stacking the papers he'd finished reading. Taking a bite of ham, Finn shook his head. "To be honest, I want to go find Tristan." "Oh?" Charles raised an eyebrow. "I just want to discuss arranging another manager for me. Plus, I want to see if I can find some jobs." Black cars have always exuded such a dignified feeling. The chauffeur opened the door for them. "May I ask, what does Mr. Charles does for a living?" "Some forms of business, mostly dealing with real estate and finances. Most of the businesses are done in Europe, though. I've also started investing in movies lately." Recalling that Finn had lost his memory, Charles continued, "Tristan and I were college schoolmates. Other than taking care of the businesses I have here in China right now, I'm also working with Tristan." "You don't even remember him?" Charles looked at the man curiously. "I don't, but I have heard of my relationship with him during my stay in the hospital." Finn began to feel a headache coming on. Using amnesia as an excuse wouldn't trick Tristan for long, but on another thought, there shouldn't be to see each other. There's no need for the company's celebrities to meet with their company president every day anyways. Other than Charles' plans for his trip in China, the two somehow landed on the subject of sports. Because his body didn't allow for any activities in the past, Finn pretty much only played billiards. Coincidentally, Charles was a self-acclaimed expert in it. The two chatted for a while before Charles suggested for them to have a match in the afternoon. Finn pleasantly accepted the challenge. The car stopped in front of a skyscraper in City S. In front of the building was a large marble slab. Words were brilliantly engraved on it. The Tristan Group. Tristan is the Tristan Group's founder and CEO. When he was young, he utilized his family's status and his personal endowments to successfully establish his current enterprise. The company owns many business in a vast variety of industries, ranging from manufacturing automobile components to finances, and now, entertainment. If there was an industry capable of generating a profitable income, he would stick his feet in it. In City S, this man was practically a legendary figure. As for the Tristan Group, that's Tristan's stronghold. Charles clearly knew of the animosity between Finn and Tristan. Does it mean that he wanted to be a mediator? If he could bury the hatchet with Tristan, Finn would be more than happy to.